is Jacqueline. I have been working with Podio for over 8 years. Many of you may recognize me from the Podio support team. Since 2017, I've been running my own partner business, doing full implementations and then building my developer skills, so building integrations to other software. So today I'm going to be demoing my QuickBooks Online integration. This is something that I started building custom for one client at a time as was needed. But then I started kind of trying to develop a solution that's as out of the box as possible. So I'm going to show you kind of the status of where that is as of now. So I have a workspace that has sort of the basics that can then be fully customized to whatever your accounting team needs. And let me get my screen up. Here. Okay, so here is the workspace. Each app here corresponds to a type of entity in QuickBooks Online. You can add more. This is just kind of like what I found most people like to get started with. So the basic starts with the ability to create invoices and bills. Some people then want to take that to create sales receipts, estimates, whatever. And then you have different kind of item types. So you have your customer list, vendors, and then products and services. And then I'll get into line items through this demo. So for the sake of brevity, I've already imported my customer list from the demo sandbox organization to this app. Each customer has the QuickBooks ID stored. This happens automatically when you import your customers in. It will search for an existing customer in QuickBooks Online. If it finds one, it'll store the ID. If it doesn't find one, it'll create a new one and then store that new customer ID. So for this demo, I'll show you how easy it is to get your QuickBooks data imported, and then I'll walk through creating a sample invoice. So from this sandbox organization, we have the ability to export everything from QuickBooks. So I'm going to find my product list here and just click on QuickBooks' export button. Just going to wrap it all into an Excel file for me. So then I can just use Podio's Excel import to bring everything in. It looks like it doesn't like the drag and drop today. Maybe it's because I'm here. Maybe the Zoom screen share doesn't like it. Okay, and while that's going, so what's going to happen is all of the products and services will be imported, and then similar to how I was describing with customers, it's going to look up the item name in QuickBooks, and if it finds one, it'll store the ID, and if not, it'll create a new one and then store that newly created item ID. So I'm just going to map everything, and this workspace starts pretty bare bones. So of course you can add whatever other details you might want to store in Podio for your items, customers, vendors, whatever. But it kind of just starts with the basics so that you don't end up with overkill, and then you can just kind of add more as you need. So you want to leave the QuickBooks ID blank, of course, because that will tell the flow to kick off and go find it. Okay, and I think calculations and Globee flows might be a little delayed, so hopefully, hopefully those won't take too long for the demo. But that's going to go ahead and start importing, and then hopefully we'll see some of the IDs coming in from Globee flow. So there were 19, so those are all there. We'll see that going, and then once we see the IDs start to come in, then we can go ahead and start creating an invoice. But while it's going, so there's kind of two routes that I've been going with clients on this so far. Either they'll have, their own setup already, so where, they just need to hook it into Podio, so then we'll build something completely custom. But the reason I made this was because I was finding a lot of people really just needed the ability to create an invoice or create a bill. So, getting something as a super basic starting point was really helpful. And a lot of times people have the technical ability to be able to create flows to feed items into an Invoices app, but then they didn't have, the knowledge to, create flows that would talk to the QuickBooks API using OAuth. That's what I'm trying to solve here. So I see the ID starting to come in. It was able to find the existing products. So if I refresh, hopefully I should see all of these IDs are filled in. There they are. So that means these are now ready to be used in invoices or bills. So I'm going to head over to my Invoices app, and we'll show you how an invoice can be created and sent over. So I'll just create a new invoice. Here's my list of customers. So these are already stored here with their IDs. You can give it your date. So line items are stored in a separate app. You'll have to create a new line item for each line that your invoice needs to have. So you just pick your product or service. So this is from our imported list. Enter your quantity. Your line cost can be entered manually, or if you leave it blank, it'll just take the item cost stored in the product and times it by your quantity. And then you can put in your description here and then hit save. So there's my first line item. And then I'll just add a second one. And we'll just say this. So once you hit save, some calculations will run. So there's a couple things you'll need to check just to kind of be wary of calculation delays. The first is that you need to make sure the QuickBooks product ID has pulled into this calculation field, because that's how we're going to know what to tag when the invoice gets created. And then you'll need to make sure the invoice total calculation has run as well. So I see that has run. If I refresh here, you can see the full information in those relationship badges. So you can have a full view of what your QuickBooks invoice is going to look like. And once you've confirmed that everything is ready to go over, looks like my line cost here didn't calculate. So we didn't have a cost there. So I can just put in a manual cost for that. So back to the invoice. Once it's ready, you can hit send to QuickBooks. So then this is going to kind of wrap everything up, find the customer in QuickBooks based on the ID, find the products based on their IDs, and then it will create an invoice and store the ID right here on this invoice item. And you'll get a link to the invoice so you can easily access it straight from your Podio item here. So we'll wait for that to run. Sometimes it can take a minute or two. I think we're just kind of reliant on GlobiFlow servers, but a little bit on the back end of this. So QuickBooks does require OAuth for their API connection. So this is all using ProcFoo since they have that type of authentication. So everything is running through a settings app. So going back to the Workspace list here, just to kind of make it as easy for the end user as possible, we have this settings app that just kind of stores basic information like your ProcFoo user ID, the service name that you created in ProcFoo, and then your QuickBooks company ID. So the flow to create the invoice is looking this up and then communicating that with ProcFoo, and then ProcFoo handles the actual sending of everything to and from QuickBooks. It looks like we're still waiting on this to go here. So I don't know if we're waiting on flows or what, but I have a example invoice we can look at from earlier, just so you can see what it looks like once it comes in. You get your invoice ID stored. So if you click on this here, I think this one just has one line item because this test I was running earlier. But then here we go, and you can see everything listed out. It's correctly tied to your customer. It's got your due date and everything. And then QuickBooks has all kinds of options. So it's super customizable. By default, the invoices don't auto send, but that's kind of a flag you can turn on or off. So once you kind of get the communication going between Podio and QuickBooks, there's all kinds of things you can do to automate it even further. And what I found is, this saves people several hours per week. A lot of teams have, 1 or 2 people that are dedicated to just manual entry of, taking information from Podio and converting it into QuickBooks invoices or, whatever else you're creating in QuickBooks. Now it's just a button click away. So it really simplifies things and saves a ton of manual entry, and it's the kind of work that no one really likes to do. So I found this is a pretty big game changer for people. So I still don't know if this flow is run, but I think that's it for the demo.